Welcome back with Jersey Scion to this week's version of Let Me Cook. We have up a fan selected character today. Make sure that you guys are commenting down below because I take that very seriously. But yeah, absolutely, like I'm really hyped about this one. So we have up Old Rutstein. Let me cook. Old Rutstein is a 3-cost 1/4 with a wall of text. Basically what it says when it enters the battlefield or at the beginning of your upkeep, mill a card. If that card is a land, you get a treasure. If you mill a creature card, you get an insect instead. And if it's a non-creature, non-land card milled this way, you get a blood token. Rutstein seems pretty straightforward. You want to just mill stuff, and you probably want to take advantage of like reanimation or aristocrat effects. But first, let me cook. I have a mixture of advantage pieces from simple effects like Acre Wellspring and Heirloom Mirror that I want to utilize in the early game. Then as the game progresses, I want to utilize cards like Braid Arisen Nightmare and Kaga Shadow Arc Druid. That card is straight up a house. It allows you to attack in, it has Death Touch, it mills from the top 2 of your library. You can cast 1 card or turn off of it as well, so it does a lot for you. Also do have a slew of Deadly Dispute effects to take advantage of the treasures and trinkets that we're going to be making each turn, but you sacrifice a creature or artifact typically for some of these effects to get some type of advantage, mainly being draw, or sometimes that can be in the form of treasures, so mana as well. But yeah, I like those effects as well. My favorite card in this category is going to be Malevolent Witch Kite. It is a 6-cost 5/4 with flying. When it enters the battlefield, you can sacrifice any number of artifacts, enchantments, and or tokens, then draw that many cards. I really don't have to elaborate like a crazy amount on this. It's pretty simple and straightforward. I've sung the praises of this card for a long time, even in my last video where I talked about the year review. It's one of my favorite cards from Eldraine. But yeah, I think it's going to be great inside of this deck. Let me cook. Moving on to our ramp section. In the beginning, I'm going to be using the usual suspects that are fairly simplistic, such as Soul Ring and Arcane Signet. We also have artifact cheapeners in here as well to help cushion some of that mana curve. So we have Cloud Key, that's going to be our best friend, as well as Foundry Inspector. But as the game progresses, we will utilize things like Eye of Oljurtok, which is a 3-cost mana rock that you can tap down for any color. But it gets even better because it has a craft mechanic where you can exile this card and exile the 2 cards from among other permanents you control and or in your graveyard. You can pay 6 for it, so you can use the mana that you can tap from the actual artifact itself, so technically 5 after that point, and then flip it to the other side. And then the backside transforms and enters the battlefield tab. You can choose from among the exile cards from earlier, and then you can tap it. The next spell that you cast of that type, it comes into the battlefield without paying mana. My favorite card in this category is Jaheir, Friend of the Forest. They are a 3-cost 2/3 that says tokens you control will have tap and add green mana to your mana pool. Yeah, that card is pretty silly, honestly. Like, it's gonna take advantage of your creature tokens that you create, your treasures. I mean, you don't have to sacrifice them for anything. And then of course, like the blood tokens along the way. Okay guys, okay. I think I dragged this out long enough. I think it's time to finally spill the beans. So what we're doing is focusing more on the artifact synergies of this list. So we're gonna have some just synergistic pieces that like coincide with that idea. So I'm gonna delve more into like what I'm planning on doing throughout my deck, and I'll talk about my individual categories / packages. Also, a huge shout out to my good friend Analysis Paralysis. They're the person that helped me come up with this idea because I was initially going to do more of a landfall focused deck. If any of you guys are on Twitch and you want to check them out, feel free to do so. It was pretty awesome. This section is going to be called It's Alive. To give more context, I'm going to be using certain cards to make our artifacts become creatures. So that consists of Karn the Great Creator, which is a 4-cost 5 loyalty planeswalker. It says activated abilities of artifacts your opponents control can be activated. But it also has a +1 effect that says until your next turn, up to 1 target non-creature artifact becomes an artifact creature with power and toughness equal to its converted mana cost. We also have Alloyed Animist, which is a 1-cost 1/1 creature that says you can pay 3, and it says until end of turn, target non-creature artifact you control becomes a 4/4 artifact creature. I feel like there's nothing funnier than getting swung at with a 4/4 blood token, you know? The last one I'll mention before we get to my top card in this section is going to be Toymaker. It is a 2-cost 1/1 artifact. You can pay 1, tap it, and discard a card from your hand, so that's really awesome for our synergy as well for milling. And then target non-creature artifact becomes an artifact creature card with power and toughness equal to its converted mana cost once again. My top card in this category should be no surprise to a lot of you, and that is Displaced Dinosaur. It is a 7-cost 7/7. It says as a historic permanent enters the battlefield under your control, it becomes a 7/7 dinosaur creature in addition to its other types. Yeah, that dinosaur is pretty ridiculous. It's probably one of the funnier cards I've seen from Doctor Who. and it's Pauper legal, like Pauper Commander specifically, but what in the world? I do want to put a little bit of a disclaimer on this as well. Please do not utilize the animation effects, the ones that like say it's based on your converted mana cost or your mana value to animate like your treasures or your blood tokens and whatnot. We want to use those primarily on the big things I'm going to mention in my next category. Let me cook. That brings us to our next category known as recursion. The first card I'm going to mention is going to be Nautiloid Ship. It is a 4-cost 5/5 vehicle with flying. It says when it enters the battlefield, exile target player's graveyard. It says whenever this card deals combat damage to a player, you may put a creature card exiled with this card onto the battlefield under your control, and it has crew 3. The next card I'm going to mention is going to be Wanderer's Crucible. It's a 7-cost artifact that says permanent you control have Ward 2. It says at the beginning of your end step, mill 2 cards, then exile a non-land card at random from your graveyard. Copy it, you may cast a copy without paying its mana cost. When I tell you guys this card is going to put in work for you, it's going to put in work. Like, it has ward on it, so it gives ward to everything that you have on the battlefield, which is pretty insane. And then the fact that you can free cast things from out of your graveyard, I mean, I love everything about it. My favorite card in this category is going to go to Portal to Phyrexia. Oh my goodness, it is a 9-cost artifact. It says when it enters the battlefield, each opponent sacrifices 3 creatures. It says at the beginning of your upkeep, put a target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. It's a Phyrexia in addition to its other types. Aside from it being a great card in general, I do love the fact that we can animate those. So those are the ones I was going to suggest for you guys to animate over like your blood and so on and so forth. Now, as far as like the ones that give your non-creature spells like a base power and whatnot, those are still good selections, but the ones that are specifically based on your converted mana cost or your mana value, I mean, nothing's crazier than getting swung at with a 9/9 and a 7/7 creature. Let me cook. The very last section I'm going to bring up is going to be win cons. So aside from beating people down with things like Gluttonous Ogre, as well as, you know, the things that animate creatures just in general, these are our pingers. And the very first one I'm going to mention to you guys is, you know, a lesser known card known as Mirkwood Bats. I was joking, of course. It's a 4-cost 2/3 with flying, and it says whenever you create or sacrifice a token, each opponent loses 1 life. We also have Agent of the Iron Throne, which is a 3-cost background, and it says commander creatures you own have whenever an artifact or a creature card is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, each opponent loses 1 life. Really like that card. And we have a similar one called Disciple of the Vault, which is a 1-cost 1/1 creature. And it says whenever an artifact is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you may have target opponent lose 1 life. And my last favorite card of the day is going to go to Marionette Master. They are a 6-cost 1/3 with Fabricate. Fabricate states that whenever this creature enters the battlefield, put 3+1/+1 counters or create 3 1/1 colorless several artifact creature tokens. And it says whenever an artifact you control is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, target opponent loses life equal to Marionette Master's power. All of these effects are really great for mid to late games. We just want to use that to start pinging down people's life totals as the game moves on, of course. And then we want to convert over to, like, you know, the beatdown strategy with Gluttonous Ogre. We have the animation effects that I mentioned earlier. So all of those are going to add to like a really fun play experience in my opinion. And that concludes this episode of Let Me Cook, or LMC for short. Once again, I want to give a special shout out to Seeking Evergreen on TikTok. Really appreciate you commenting and saying that you would like something like this. Like I said, going forward, if you guys have any suggestions, I do take them to heart. You know, depending on how many people comment, I'll try to see who I can get to and when. But I appreciate everybody for watching this video, especially towards the end. Really appreciate that. If you guys would drop a like, it really means a lot to me, okay? Hope you guys take care. Thank you.